Good morning. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. Some flowers that aren't supposed to bloom until summer I have on the windowsill out front, and they're about 3 months earlier than they're supposed to be. But also they're not, the seeds I've collected a couple times and tried to plant and get some seedlings because other people have said, oh, I'd love that plant, and none of us know what it is. There seem to be sterile, so I guess it needs some kind of pollination process. So anyways, enjoy the color. And Taz is enjoying the proximity to the plant. So I have a couple of things to chat about today. The first book I read is Margaret the First. It's an adult book. It's by Danielle Dutton, and she has written other things as well, primarily short stories, I believe. And there's another novel called Sprawl, and she's written a comic opera called Here Comes Kitty. So this is a book about Margaret the First, who's an actual, real life fancy Dan person, and about the, I got a little confused about when she existed. I know that she's factually there, but I was trying to think and put what I know about British history in place, and I got a little muddled once or twice. But she's a contemporary of Shakespeare and the philosophers just around the time of the end of the Elizabethan era. And she was a young girl who was of no particular consequence, who caught the eye of the let me see, she was a marchioness. So what is the husband when he's at home for dinner? He's a march. I don't know what he is. Anyways, she kind of caught his attention, and he was an older gentleman and already had some children by his first wife, and so was not particularly concerned about her background. And they married, and they did not have children, although they tried. And he was a big supporter of Charles the First, and that's how they ended up in Paris and also in Antwerp, Belgium. So the story takes us through those kind of pivotal points, and then Charles II is reinstated to the throne, and they're able to travel back to England. Now, by now, Charles II has got his own entourage, and Daddy's favorites are sort of passé. So William is unable to really reclaim what he's lost as a result of being in exile. So Margaret is a fairly quiet, unnoticeable type of young lady, and as the years go by, she starts to do some writing, and her writing is quite peculiar. It's fragmented, and she really declines the notion of a conclusion, because she feels that she's writing life as it's happening, which has no beginning and no end, and this is how her writings go. And she also has got a fantastical imagination. So she is imagining worlds in a bubble where there's fairy princesses and dragons fighting, and then as the bubble is floating, this is transpiring, and when the bubble lands up against a bush and bursts, that's the end of that world. And so she's got this really interesting minutiae type of imagination going on, with gem-encrusted gowns, but I gather that the reading public just doesn't get the writing style. And then along comes the microscope, and the microscope opens up the world for these new and budding, what do you call them, naturalists, I guess. So what was the word? Microbiology, I think. Yeah, it was a bit of a funny word. I can't remember how it's pronounced. Becomes the rage, and you see all these different kinds of things in the cell structures of an apple core or what have you. So she kind of feels she was there first. So she gets into a bit of a tiff with a few of the philosophers and scientists of her time. Well, that's kind of the story, and the writing style here is quite different, because we can get an entire year encapsulated in about 15 sentences. The author has got a fairly chop kind of chronological thing to it. They're in Antwerp, they're having a dinner party, turn the page, and they're on the boat returning to England. It makes sense in terms of the sequence, but it's not a smooth line. It's a very jaggedy line of time. So it's so poetical. It's really lovely. She's a very weird character. I think she probably suffers from she could maybe suffer from manic depression. She maybe has poor judgment. She certainly gauges a couple things wrong socially, and she's completely obsessed with people reading her writing and admiring her for it, and not just once. Like, you're not the kind of person who wants to receive a compliment and on we go. She likes to be reminded several times that you admire her work. So I think it's a very interesting book. I was quite surprised by the character, and the writing style is a bit different. It's a fairly short book, coming in at about 160 pages, and there's a pretty darn good bibliography at the back so that you can actually dive into this world in terms of theater and philosophers, and it's very well researched. But the writing style is really what draws you through the book, because in a way, Margaret Drabble, the way she's written about the character herself, is not fully fleshed out. I think the author could have been a bit more flamboyant to meet the personality of the character that she's describing. But I thought it was a really solid book. I read it quite quickly, and I don't know, when was it published? I was wondering whether it came up for any of the awards for women. 2016. I don't know whether it was brought forward for a Women's Writers Award or not. It should be. It would be a good contender. Okay, next book. Angelino Brown is a book about a little angel that comes into the pocket of Bert Brown, who's a bus driver in England, and the story kind of just expands and grows and is lovely and charming and silly, and of course there's evil intentioned adults in the story. There are children who are completely wonderstruck by Angelino and his angelness, and there's one decent teacher who really takes the kids' enthusiasms on board. It's a middle reader book, and I quite enjoyed it. I thought, this is David Almond, and how many other he's written? Skellig, Kit's Wilderness, My Name is Mina, and I believe he's done some other collaborative workings for younger readers. I really enjoyed it. It was a solid little book. It comes off of my list from 2018 for the Hornbook magazine, where I go through and choose which books I think I'd really like to read. So I'm getting to the end of the 2017 list of books that I still want to read. I think it had a really fun storyline. There was definitely tension. There was definitely the conflict between good and evil. The Angelino is a funny little character. His sort of foster parents are really charming. And the bad guy is actually kind of charming too. He's a master of disguise. I think he's barely out of school. I mean, if he's even supposed to be out of school, he maybe still has a grade or two to finish, but he's decided that he's going to make it as a villain instead of a school kid. And so there's a bit of funniness happening there. I think that if I was judging this as an adult, I probably wouldn't give it quite as high marks, but if thinking of myself as somewhere between 9 and 12, I would probably give this a 4. I think it's really a very nice book, and I think the solution is quite sweet and charming too. So I think this is a really good book for someone who's not looking for a lot of conflict in their fiction, who's a younger reader. Well, the other book I'm bringing to you is Just William, and this is by Richmal Crompton, and it was in my big stack over there, so that means the stack has gone down to 34. And this is a series of little short stories about William, William is a young fellow in 1939. He's probably about 11 years old, and he cannot refrain from getting into deep trouble wherever he goes. He has a vision of the world that is completely anti-adult, in the sense of, not that he's in direct conflict with them. He's not seeking out conflict with the adult, but they certainly get in his way. And he has got a lot of rules around him, so he's still trying to live a life of adventure and outlaws, and his fellow boyhood chums are also hoping to be outlaws, and they're practicing things like stealth, creeping up and setting fires that they can cook over. So there's all kinds of rules they're breaking. And this is 1939, where the kids are kind of let go, but at the same time they're supposed to remember all the rules and instructions that were given to them over the course of their rapid exits of the house as they try to get away from scrutiny. William, it's not that he doesn't have a conscience, but he just hasn't got a lot of patience for the fripperies of these rules, and they're just nonsensical to him. And so why wouldn't you steal a piece of cake from the pantry if you're going out on an adventure? It's there. Why wouldn't you bring a cow to a campfire? It's there. He just really has got a sense of enthusiasm and adventure and nowness. And there are a couple of times where he has an inkling that consequences are coming, but once you've broken the rules and realized the consequences are coming, what the heck? You might as well just keep on going. So this book we've been doing as a read aloud. I've been reading it while Steve's been doing his marvelous cooking. And sometimes I can't breathe. I'm laughing so hard, especially the first story. Oh my God, it took twice as long to read because I had to stop in between to just breathe. Everyone, we've laughed at everyone. Not all of them are quite as insane as the first one, but we've got 2 stories left to go, and I'm hoping we end on a bang. I looked this author up, Richmal Crompton, and she has written about 30 that have to do with William. Then there's another series that she's written that have to do with, I think his name's Justin, and then she's written a couple of others, and so she's very prolific. And I would think that that's sort of like stories like Poirot or so on. Once you've read a few, you get a sense of where it's going. So this is a sort of little book that you would, or the author is one that you would space over time. And sometimes you can get a sense of where P.G. Wodehouse is going. Is it P.G. or P.D.? P.G. Wodehouse is going with his stories too, because he's got a certain formula, but it's in the details, it's in the characterization where you just lose your pants laughing. So I've really enjoyed this. This is the only book by this Macmillan Classics in this format by this author. So if we want to follow through, we're going to have to find a different publisher. And as she is British, I'm not sure how much she's going to be in the used bookstore. So it may be one of those winter, I'm bored, what's for sale on used books in England kind of adventure next year. So that little book is done. Now the other big exciting things is there's a fellow called Rick, and he's from Canada, out west, and he has something that he does every 2 or 3 months. It's called The Spin, and you're invited to attend one of his vlog up posts where he spins the wheel, and the numbers go from 1 to 20. And what you're supposed to do is whatever the arrow lands on, you go to your TBR, your to be read list, and you pick the 2 numbers that come up. So this spin was number 7 for him, and the numbers that came up were 17 and 20. So I'm going to go with my stack and see what books come off that. So let's see what happens. All right, so the first number was 17. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Oh, okay, that's good. I'm glad about that. This is The Minted by Will McClellend. Steve's just finished this. It's a Canadian author, and it's kind of insane. I think I told you guys about this back when we got it from Lunenburg. The boreal terrorists, the scourge of Canada, the great black beast, all these names have been applied to the moose, the charismatic leader of a violent animal rebellion that is wreaking havoc upon urban Canada in 2030. Only the moose and his followers understand that the true seat of power in the country is the Royal Canadian Mint. From its horrific production floors, the soul of every animal in the north is being systematically destroyed through a mysterious process known as minting. So it's by turns a memoir, a confession, and reportage from the front lines. The Mint is a dizzying tour through Canada's colonial psyche, replete with ancient demons, muzzled members of parliament, and interspecies sex. Okay, so now I wonder, since I pulled that one out physically, I guess, does 20 move, or do I go with the original 20? Let's just start from the bottom and see what happens. I guess that means that number 19 wouldn't be 20, but oh well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, this is, well, that's not such a great result in the sense that Cheryl and I are supposed to be reading these books together. These are the ones that we unboxed for you guys a while ago. This is My Husband Simon by Mollie Panter-Downes. What is this about? Nevis Faulkner, a young, sophisticated novelist, meets and marries Simon Quinn. She comes to realize that her passionate marriage is stifling her creative talent and finds herself increasingly distracted and disillusioned with her writing. Then one day in London, she meets Marcus Chard, her American publisher, and everything changes. What a funny last name, Chard. Okay, so that's the 20th book on the list. Those two are supposed to be read somewhere between now and the next time he does the spin, which I'm pretty sure he said was going to be June. So I will link him in the thing below, and in case you want to just watch, he will tell you about the books he's reading, and I think there are links to the books that other booktubers have spun and chosen, and so it's a kind of a fun little thing. And I think it's also posted a bit on Instagram, so you might find yourself in a fun little spot with that project. It's also the thing that's also fun about it is you don't have to tell anybody if you blew it, or you're not owning any kind of responsibility. It's just, you know, your own little self-challenge. So that's it for me today. I hope your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.